Welcome to the Skinwalker Debrief. I'm your host, TJ Allard, and I'm one of the executive producers of the new television series on history called The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. I'm joined each week by Jason McClellan and Maureen Elsberry, and together we'll dissect each episode to give you more insight into the show and a little background info. Jason McClellan has been exploring all the strange for more than a decade. He's appeared on Nat Geo, Sci-Fi, History, and he's the author of Only Weirdos See UFOs, an introduction to the public's misperception of unidentified aerial phenomenon and extraterrestrial life. Maureen is a journalist, researcher, and podcaster specializing in the anomalies. She starred in the docuseries Uncovering Aliens on Animal Planet and served as the ambassador for Science Channel's Are We Alone initiative. For those joining us for the first time here on the Skinwalker Debrief, we go over each episode block by block and discuss. In TV, a block is considered the time between commercials. And tonight, we'd like to welcome back plasma physicist and principal investigator at Skinwalker Ranch, Erik Bard. Erik, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for the invite.
Of course. We are glad to have you here. This is awesome. So, like I said, we're going to go through the show. Now, last week you were on, we didn't have a chance to go through a show because we weren't on the air, but you took a lot of questions and we'd gotten a lot of feedback and even more questions. But this week, you're with us for our first dissection of an episode, and I'm sure you'll be able to contribute some really cool info. The way we do it, I'm going to pick out a few points in each block of the show. We'll discuss and then get you to chime in and tell us a little bit more. Cool?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you know how it works. All right, so this week's episode, Dangerous Curves. So the byline for this was advanced testing shows evidence of strange anomalies under the ranch, and Brandon finally gives the team permission to dig. I know you don't normally get a chance to see the episodes because you're so busy at the ranch, but this time you actually said you did get to see it.
So, I did. I got to see it last night.
Overall first impressions. What were they?
Good memories. That was a pretty enjoyable time period. And I felt like the work that we were doing was not just interesting, but the beginning of something else to come.
Excellent. Now, didn't he say something about this episode too? Like his favorite? Or?
It was his favorite, yeah. He said
he and I
the
made
stuff they covered
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, I think he was hinting that he was expecting a lot of data to come out of the specific testing that was going on in this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it did net quite a bit of data, yes.
So when we first start off the show in the A block of the show, so you have Travis wake up with William barking.
God dang it, William, what are you barking at? So William just woke me up. It's like 4:51 a.m. in the morning, and he's barking like crazy, and he took off running out across the field. I'll go see if I can see what it was.
And, he wakes up hearing something on the spectrum analyzer.
I'm getting a huge and constant level of radio waves across the entire frequency spectral band. It's like turning on a radio and having every single station playing the exact same song at the exact same level.
Now, if I move it across, look at the signal. It's extremely sinusoidal and has a lot of structure. Never seen anything like it.
Now, he also mentions that you have a different kind of spectrum analyzer. Can you explain?
Well, the devices are fundamentally the same. The type of analyzer that he's using is known as an SDR, which is software definable radio. So it's a device that we connect to our computers, and it allows us to not just listen, but also to visualize the signals across a given frequency range. And he right away picked up on something. It's something that I hadn't seen before. And, I don't want to preempt it. So let's continue. Yes,
of course. Now, but it was being picked up by two different devices, so you could kind of corroborate that it was happening.
That's the right way to say it. I wasn't looking for it at the time that he first noticed this unusual noise floor effect. I wasn't looking at that range of the RF spectrum. And in fact, he noticed this, I think for the first time, he noticed it really late at night. And I'll confess, I wasn't looking. So right away afterwards, of course, I went to see if I could corroborate it. And yes, we have some interesting things that happen across a very wide range of the RF spectrum, affecting what we refer to as the noise floor, kind of the background level. So imagine if you can remember the old days when we had TVs that worked off VHS and UHF, and the fuzz, all the black and white dots that would dance around on the screen. Imagine if you saw a pattern in those black and white dots, something that looked like it had a structure to it. That's kind of like what Travis noticed in the RF spectrum.
Okay. From his description, this is something that it's impossible for us as humans to do right now. Our tech isn't there.
I heard him say that, yeah.
Yeah. Does it seem like there could be plausible explanations for this that we just have yet to think of, or that you guys have tested or didn't test? Are there things you want to test to try to pull this out and try to figure this out?
Well, there are two things. Once our attention was turned to this, after Travis alerted to this thing, yes, we've done the RF spectrum, sweeping and looking and focusing on a particular region in the past, and do it on an ongoing basis. But after he drew attention to specifically what was happening with the background, the noise floor, we noticed two things going on. There was the periodicity that shows up in the footage that I saw in the episode, but there's also something else that happens that's transient. And I guess the word that comes to mind is that it's violent. There's something happening across a wide range of the RF spectrum where it's jumping up and down. And if you listen to it, it's like a thumping, hissing sound that comes and goes. I'm not really sure what the origin is. I have some ideas. Of course, it's my job to come up with ideas. And I suppose we will be continuing to look at that.
Yeah, we don't want to give away too much. Periodicity, is that the word you used?
Yeah, sure.
What was that? What is that?
Well,
for those who don't know.
Good question. So that's something that repeats. We can use the term to refer to something that happens over and over in time. And so there's a certain period to the repetition. It also can apply in space. Something can have a spatial periodicity, like a regular pattern. But I don't want to get off into the weeds.
Please, you can jump in the weeds anytime you want, man.
I guess on the ranch, I'm in the weeds all the time anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yes. The Serengeti, that is.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think we get to that.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, is this perhaps, I think last week I kind of asked you about whether you had experienced what people are calling the hum phenomenon. You said there's something else going on that we've heard, and this was what you were alluding to, or is...
Yeah, it's actually something else. Now, I'm glad you asked that question, Maureen, because you just reminded me of something. Prompted by what I saw last night, I had to go back and look at my own footage, on the surveillance systems. And in particular, what we were picking up in the audio channel. And this other thing that I alluded to last time, this grinding, humming, out-of-place sound whose origins I've yet to determine, actually did happen on that night. Now, is there a relationship? I don't know. You're going to hear me say it a lot. Correlation is not causation. I don't know. But, a lot of interesting signals coming in on a lot of streams. And that's the kind of thing we're looking for. We're looking for those correlations.
Right.
I had the same thought when I saw that on the show. I was thinking about your comment last week about that, so... Interesting.
I'm glad I said at least one thing that was worth remembering.
Come on, you say a lot of things worth remembering. I mean, I can't remember them now, but no, just kidding. No, so all right, that little that vignette happens. The dog, William barking, stuff happening. Travis picking up some signals. Next thing we know, we're in the room and we're talking about theories, right? And we get the dramatic flip of the blackboard.
So here's one thing it could possibly mean. This might sound crazy, but what if the only way to explain all these things is with a wormhole.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So, please.
I noticed the sort of dumbfounded look on my own face. It was kind of embarrassing.
No, it was good.
The look on Dragon's face was priceless too.
It always is.
Please cut to that. Please show Dragon's face there.
Yeah. Please show him, not me. But really, this is the kind of discussion that I really treasure. This is something that I enjoy a lot, and I hope we get to do this a lot more. No theory is too strange or far-fetched. And in fact, I think what Travis is reaching for with that explanation is something that has what we can all appreciate, and that is kind of a unifying appeal, meaning a single cause resulting in multiple effects. And so anytime we see something that could possibly explain lots of things that we're seeing that don't have an apparent relationship to each other, and this one cause could possibly give rise to it, it's really enticing. And so I want to continue that discussion on that topic with him.
No, I feel like, we didn't get too deep into it, which is fine because I think we come back to that stuff later. Sure. And there's more data that needs to happen. So, we have the wormhole revelation, and then we go into, our break, and then we come back. And this was something that really struck me because I know this is near and dear to your heart. It's near and dear to my heart. It's something that happens a lot out there that I just can't understand. And it's Caleb's phone freaking out.
Yeah.
My phone's freaking out. Just want you to see it.
What is it doing?
I don't know. It's just been doing this for the last, couple minutes. It just ran up here so you can see it. It was in my contacts. It tried calling a couple people. And then it's been messing around in my camera the last couple minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So we touched on it for like 5 seconds in the show, and I know there's so much more there. So please, could you enlighten us as to what was going on?
Phones, they're telling us a lot, particularly on the ranch. I don't know what's going on in that case. That when he showed that to me, ultimately by the end of the summer, this is something that happened several times, and he says that this is something that happens only when he's on the ranch. There's clearly something going on with his phone, and so what we saw where all these apparent button pushes were taking place, it's tempting to interpret that as deliberate. It's tempting to interpret that as someone doing that. I don't know that that's what's going on, and I've seen some possible explanations for phones misbehaving that way.
Erik, could you tell us a couple of those? Like, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's bullshit. This is happening. This isn't happening." This is like someone's touching it off screen. There's a producer doing something. Like, what are potential explanations that you know of that could cause this?
So with that model of phone that Caleb has, one of the things that could, or that does seem to go along with that, is if there's damage to the screen, cracks on the screen. And I think we can go out on the web and we can find examples of people's phones doing this, or something similar. What I have to wonder is why, in the case of his phone, why is it happening, according to Caleb, exclusively on the ranch or close by, as opposed to when he's out, when he's at home or wherever. And so it occurred to me that maybe the RF generating phenomena that we see, maybe he's got a device that's marginal. Maybe it's on the edge, if you will, of misbehaving this way, and maybe there's some triggering physics that's a bit stronger there on the ranch, like the RF, like radio frequency emanations that we perhaps don't see in other environments. Maybe that's what's going on. But like I said, I've seen this happen multiple times, and he's shared it with me. Sometimes he's able to snatch a video of it with another phone, like we saw in the episode.
So the two elders here in this world, Maureen and Jay, you guys kind of know this stuff. Like, is this a common thing? Have you heard of this before, where phones kind of freak out like this, or this kind of behavior in these environments?
I don't know if in those environments it's happened to my phone before, not as extreme as that, but I had my phone it seemed like it was possessed, and I couldn't turn it off or do anything, and everything was flashing. But that was, I have no idea what caused it or what happened, but I was just out camping, so there's no landscape excuse for that incident. But I don't know, Jason. I'm an Android. That's Android life for me.
Me too.
Yeah, I can't say I've heard of iPhones misbehaving, and I say that because
here we go.
Here we go.
No, but I mean, we definitely saw it, so that's fascinating. And I mean, we've heard about misbehaving phones, both with like during ghost hunts and alleged UFO encounters, both of which there are theories about or speculation about electromagnetic frequencies and things like that playing some role in that. I haven't physically seen it happen, and I haven't seen examples on video like we saw on this show. And I got to say, I mean, seeing what was happening to his phone looked like something out of a horror movie. It was crazy to see.
I just kept thinking, I hope his phone doesn't start actually dialing people that you forgot to delete from your phone, past flames,
or pulling up your naughty photos.
Not sure Caleb has any naughty photos in there.
Caleb's case, but
yeah, exactly.
We'll have to ask Caleb about that.
All right. Yeah, we got to get him on here, man.
You'll have to have that discussion. But I'll tell you, he has commented to me before that, in fact, yes, his phone has sent messages and placed calls.
Wow.
And again, it's tempting to read volition into that. In other words, intention. You don't have to go right there. I guess if you do something enough,
right.
Eventually you can get some of the outlier cases coming through, and it dials a number or sends a message where there's a meaningful word. At one point, I thought I saw Cyrillic characters on his screen. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw characters that I didn't recognize as being English characters. So it was all over the map. And here's an idea. I just thought of this. You've seen what I did with the magnet, right? As being something that could, again, explain not just the misbehavior of a mobile electronic device, but perhaps some of the other things that are happening with us physiologically, as well as with other equipment types. With the magnet, I was looking for, can I at least elicit the same behavior? Is there something that I can do that will cause this device, even though a phone's not intended to be a scientific instrument, it really is. It contains lots of very sensitive measuring devices. So why not use it as such? And so if I can find a way to get the device to behave in the same way, knowing what the physics are, then maybe that's going to give me some insight into what's happening in the wild, on its own. And so getting to the idea, it just occurred to me, we could try a couple of things. We could take Caleb's phone or a phone that's exhibiting this behavior and deliberately subject it to emanations from some kind of like a frequency generator, an RF frequency generator, or even a microwave oven. We could put it near, not inside, but near the microwave oven. The tri-field meters. I've got one of those right here. You've seen these on the screen. Right? So these things actually are sensitive enough that if you have one in your home and you turn your microwave oven on, they'll indicate, and strongly. Perhaps there's enough RF that gets out of, say, a microwave oven that it could elicit that response on a phone that's on the edge of malfunctioning anyway. I don't know. Just an idea.
Okay. No, I mean, he seemed pretty freaked out by it, so I would have been too.
Yeah.
But so then we see Caleb's phone, and then I love your comment to the visiting GPR tech who says, who's laughing, and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure we should be laughing about this.
Oh. Right. Actually, yeah, that's how I felt. And
no,
it is. Oh, it's an open question. Is this funny or not? Because if in fact there's something going on in the environment, some additional RF that we're all being subjected to, perhaps that's not a good thing. Right. We know, and I don't want to be too shrill about this, but there are medically relevant effects associated with the phenomenology on the ranch. It doesn't always happen. It's unpredictable. But some people have experienced things that have caused them to be sick and even worse.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I keep going back to my experiences. I got very, very sick there. Through this episode, a lot of the things that Travis has done. Actually, I feel like Travis is following in the path of a lot of the things that I had done previously, and I also ended up with markings and issues for months and months afterward. So I probably shouldn't have done those things. However, I did. But anyway, we'll get into that more. I mean, there's plenty of time to go into those aspects of things. I just want to kind of go through the rest of what's been happening here. We begin now with the GPR stuff. The GPR and the soil resistivity. There it is. Resistivity. Thank you. So, Erik, what's the difference? Which is more effective? Which is better, or for what purpose?
Well, they measure physically different things by physically different means, right? So in the case of GPR, as the name indicates, ground penetrating radar, we are broadcasting electromagnetic waves, radiation down into the ground, and we're looking at what comes back. So you have something that's emanating, a source, and then we have a detector. A lot of devices work that way. Some of the devices that I've developed in industry do the same kinds of things in the X-ray physics realm. So here you have a device that sends something out and then looks for what comes back. And this is RF. Now, in the case of the resistivity measurement, what you're doing is you've got a series of basically electrodes pounded into the ground, and you have a device that can energize those electrodes in sequence. And you're measuring how much electrical resistance there is between any 2 points. And you're looking at what we would call the transient response as well as the DC response. I don't want to put too much lingo in everyone's ears.
No, please put the lingo. It's good.
Well, and I'm not an expert in that. It was really helpful for me to get to learn more about these technologies from the gentleman who came on site. I actually took some time with Zach afterwards, after everybody left, and we did some additional measurements. It was fun. It was my first time to do that kind of thing. But what are we getting out of it? What we're getting out of it is an indication of differences in the electrical properties of things down below the ground level. GPR penetrates to different depths depending upon the device and depending upon the conductivity of the soil and other parameters. So we're seeing those what look like dome-shaped features. We're seeing these; they're hyperboloids is the right term. The hyperbolic features that, as Phil indicated, tell us that there's a change in density there. There's either a rock or like a boulder or a metal object, or even a void. I think the term cavern or tunnel was used. It's a change in density. And so as we were dragging that one instrument behind the UTV, we were looking at a map as it emerged on the screen, showing us that we were coming into an area where there were objects different from the surrounding material along that path.
And you confirmed it because you went back and forth.
Yeah,
you did
we made several passes. Now,
so it wasn't just
to be honest, really, I'm only going to be satisfied when we've applied the same technology to every square inch of the property, right? So, I mean, this was a first, and I think this is the appropriate way to do this. You just do it. You probe. You do a first look and motivate additional steps. And I don't know, how do you feel? I feel motivated.
Yeah, I think it is that kind of desire after you find it in one place. Well, could there be the whole ranch and testing out different sections at a time? I would be motivated too. Be like, let's go do this.
Yeah, let's go look some more.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess we will.
I was just going to make the comment that, as it is with all the things that we encounter on the ranch, there's always the possibility that what we're looking at is just mundane. I mean, there are natural variations in the materials beneath the ground anywhere you go. Mm-hmm. So, we don't have to interpret it as meaning that there's something exotic, structurally exotic or materially exotic, under the ranch. But it's how we start to at least address the question. Nice.
Okay, I mean, so we're doing our GPR scans, and we come back again with some, so in the C block, we come back with some assumptions as to what it could be. I think someone mentioned 8 to 25 feet underground, right? Was that right? They're saying 8 to 25 feet underground, and then it was determined to be 1,000 feet long? Is this correct?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. 1,000-foot long object, 25 feet underground.
Or
okay.
Series of objects distributed over a distance of about 1,000 feet.
And that 1,000-foot area that it's spanning is around Homestead 2, where a lot of the anomalous activities and things are breaking down, like equipment failures, battery failing, all of that. So that's kind of that area.
It is. We're and I think you introduced that the right way. I mean, that area is especially interesting to us. I'm not making any claims at this point as to assignable cause, but it makes a lot of sense to study that area.
I'm just glad the batteries finally worked on the GPR, so you could do that area.
Yeah, I know it. It was so odd.
Erik, was it really odd? Was it really? I mean, it's kind of commonplace. Like, is it really odd there?
Well, to be clear, I asked the question when we brought the instruments out of the truck. What's going on? Why is the instrument already indicating such a low charge level? And it was the answer that I got that got my attention. And I was told that the instrument was fully charged prior to these gentlemen coming on site. And that sort of thing gets my attention. Rapid anomalous battery discharge is something that we see in a lot of different devices. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I meant when I said it's kind of odd. But then, others, including viewers, have asked a very appropriate question. Well, if you have something that's doing this to batteries, then why are you able to even make a documentary? How are you able to function at all? And the answer that I give, which I hope is not misunderstood as evasive, the answer that I give is that it is episodic. It's transient. It comes and goes. And perhaps that's one of its most interesting properties. What's causing it to come and go?
Right. Have there been attempts yet to track that waxing and waning of that transient nature?
I've sure tried.
I imagine you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
And as you mentioned last week, TJ, it did affect production.
Yeah,
production
absolutely.
crew did experience some of this stuff. Obviously, you're not going to see that on the TV show because they're not going to show cameras going down.
Well, it's the footage you don't have.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned before, pretty much across the board, almost every piece of technology that we've put out on the ranch, if it's there long enough, it will experience some kind of a malfunction, an atypical behavior that we don't see in other places. Eventually, enough of these results stack up that we start to see a pattern.
And so in the spirit of Erik's trying to expand the reach of the experimentation and the reach of people's interests, if anyone who's listening has plausible explanations as to why these things happen that maybe we're just completely unaware of, like, batteries fail because, I don't know, there's too much oregano in the room, something silly, like something we'd never think of. But if there are explanations like that you can, put forth, please. Like, these are kind of things, this is, so Erik, please tell us, talk to us about that. I mean, you're very interested in, trying to help people help you, or help people help this search.
Absolutely. I really enjoy the dialogue with those people who engage it with the right kind of discipline. It's a balance between free and creative thinking and being too restrictive. But for those who are familiar with, for example, battery technology, and I think I mentioned last time we spoke that a part of my career was in the development of battery charger and management circuitry. So as it happens, coincidentally, I have experience with that. And I raised the question, and I think I have an answer to this question. Is it really the battery, or is it the charge management circuitry that's being affected? And I think I have evidence to say that it is at least the latter, if not both. Right. And so going back to your question, I know that there are folks who have insights into this sort of thing, perhaps from experience that they've had in other areas. And I'd love to hear those theories or read those theories.
This is why we have to get Ben McGee talking with Erik, right?
Yeah. We should get these two on a call together.
Could you explain it? Tell Erik who Ben is, so I didn't just. He's like, who the hell is this Ben McGee guy? Because I don't know if he knows who he is.
But I want to know.
Yes.
Ben is what's his official geologist, or what does he have some fancy title?
His fancy title, he calls himself an interdisciplinary scientist because he is. He's been a radiation scientist. He's a geologist. At one time, he was he set up a company to train astronauts to go to space.
Yeah.
He's a multidisciplinary scientist.
He actually worked for Robert Bigelow for a little bit. So we've met him through he was on a scientist on a UFO show, and that's how we got introduced to him. He's a really smart guy, but we talked to him a bit about what some of the effects on the mesa could relate to, and he was super excited trying to come up with some theories. So he'd definitely be a good person to connect with.
And he's actually spent a lot of time in the region doing geologic work and radioactivity related work in that region. Perfect.
Yeah, these are the kinds of minds with whom we want to engage. Absolutely.
Yes. It's just a matter of reaching out to them, or having them reach out to us, and then finding the ones that would best fit. But I mean, these guys, we had talked about him before, and it's like, I think Erik, you guys would really have a lot of fun together, just kind of, nerding out. And I would love to put a camera on that nerding out that's going to happen, but we got to figure out a way to make that happen. But so going forward, so we're going back to now we're into the C block, which is, you guys are talking about the confirmed domes, 8 to 20 feet underground. Same place where the drone did not work. And here's a pretty basic question. And you know what? If you can't, that's fine. Because it might be hard to kind of abstractly describe what the hell are people seeing when they look at the GPR screens when they're showing the results. It's always these like wavy lines, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I get it. I think but nobody ever understands that."
Well, so part of me wants to jump to the front of the line and give the answer, right? And be seen as a source of wisdom on this topic. The other part of me wants to encourage those who are motivated to type it in and go look it up. So I'll share a little, but I don't want to preempt the others' search into this. One of the things that I'm hoping will happen as a natural byproduct of this documentary series is that we will get people taking that initiative to go research some of these topics a little more deeply for themselves, rather than having me give my version of it. So again, with the caveat that, I'm trained as a plasma physicist, I've worked as an electrical engineer, and I've worked in other areas. I'm not a geologist, and I'm not a guy who routinely uses ground penetrating radar, but I think I understand that what we're seeing are the local variations in the material beneath the ground, and how they either absorb or reflect the RF signal that's coming down from the device and then coming back up off of them. So as we move along the Earth, we should expect to see variations. You mentioned the ripples, right? Now, the other features that really stand out to us, because we're really good at pattern recognition, I think, at least visually. The other thing that stands out are these very well-defined curves, these hyperbolic features. And those result from perhaps one object right here. Okay, so we'll put an object here, and you might get a hyperboloid that spans the object. So you have a localized cause here. You have an effect that is imaged by the system coming back out. We should not misinterpret those shapes as being the actual physical shape of an object beneath the ground. I hope I haven't butchered that too badly.
Makes sense. I mean, it's better than most of us probably do. I mean, do you guys have?
What did I tell you last time? I'm here to be caught red-handed in the act of learning.
Nice.
And, I like to do that with good company.
Well, yeah. I'm glad you asked that question, TJ, because I had the same question as I was watching the show, thinking, man, I wish I knew how to interpret this data that I'm seeing on the screen, because it was so exciting to be getting that, and I could see how excited they were, the people who knew how to read this. So thank you for that explanation, and I think I will go do some digging and try to learn more about this.
Perfect.
Yes, yeah. I already Googled it. Well, he said
it. Well, Maureen, how did I do? Did I do a decent job of explling it?
I didn't get
your sources.
I'm only on the search result page. I haven't gotten that far.
Understood.
But yeah, no, and I think that's good. It's kind of explaining to the dumbed down answer of that is no, there is not a football shaped base necessarily under there. We're not looking at the actual shape, like you said, of the domes.
Right. Now, in all fairness, I don't want to say something that sounds like I'm contradicting what's been said in the series. In all fairness, what you can have are associated sources of those signals that are distributed as Travis did the exercise. I love the way he did this. He took some paper. I think I handed him several pieces of paper. He taped them up on the screen, and he started locating the apex of each of those features and looking at how they are distributed as a group. And certainly those could be caused by features of some common object. But my first interpretation of these was to say, oh, it looks like I have a pattern of objects here. And that's the 1,000-foot long thing. Mm-hmm. But I think it's best for me to defer to the experts in that field.
Sure. No, you're very good at that. You don't like to speak out of turn and make sure you stay in your lane, you know what you know, and you don't like to kind of veer.
Right. Yeah, so what Travis noticed was a pattern, a distribution.
Oh, you know what? Somebody had said, though, the domes or the anomalies that they had seen, they were like, oh, this it looks like it could be metal. But GPR does not determine what that element is, correct?
Again, in my rudimentary understanding of GPR, the strength of the signal, how well defined the signal is, may be an indicator of how different the material is that's responsible for that reflection from its surroundings. But as far as identifying the elemental composition of the material, I don't think it gives us that information.
Right. I didn't think so either. Unless, do you guys know any of this?
I believe on the show they were even speculating that boulders could potentially cause it. So I think that answers it a little bit.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a whole stream of things that are possibilities with that same kind of looking data.
Right. Okay. And so I wonder if we would all agree that the take home from this is we need to look some more.
Absolutely. I think we're all shaking our head. Yep. We got to look some more.
And when I make the statement, it may or may not be understood right away when I say, let's be led by the data. Let's let what we do be motivated by what we have done and what we have seen. And so this is how we proceed forward. That first test, I think, was a very good one. Obviously, this is one of the few times when you see me smiling in this series.
It is.
I was quite happy that we were actually out there doing something that we contemplated doing for quite some time. And I'm excited about the potential of expanding that study across the property as much as we can.
Yeah, and I think I've read somewhere too that it was like that similar kind of, not necessarily on the scope of what is appearing here, but ground penetrating radar too has been used to find burial sites, and you are on old Native American grounds, so it's, there's so much that could be down there, so it's really intriguing to let's find out what it is.
Yeah,
and hopefully not disturb any
right.
burial sites. I should say that, preface that.
I appreciate that outlook. I feel the same way. I guess, some will look at what I've done as being light-handed, particularly out of concern for not disturbing the very thing that I'm trying to study, or not disturbing something that is very important to others. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. I don't just charge in out of curiosity and start excavating. I like this approach that you see us taking in this episode, where we are motivating further steps. Obviously, we chose our location for reasons grounded in our history. And we came in and we looked at what might be considered just a probe of the question.
Sure.
And now I would say, if we have the opportunity, which I expect we will, we need to do that again on a much larger scale.
Absolutely.
And so then going into the D block, we have, basically more anomalies underground in that area. And then we have the lifting up of the concrete cap. And then what we are led to believe is exposure to ionizing radiation.
Holy, mine's beeping.
Your max dose rate is about 120?
Yes, 120 something.
That's pretty high. That's pretty high.
This is really scary. My dosimeter device, which measures exposure to ionizing radiation, is showing that I just got hit with 120 millirads per second. That's like getting 20,000 full-body X-ray scans in an airport, which is 5 times more than the legal limit allows in a year.
So there are lots of different kinds of radiation detecting devices.
The ones they were using, you guys were issued those, right? When you got there,
correct.
Those red ones? And what were those, though? Do you remember?
I never looked inside, but it's my understanding that these are the solid state gamma detecting devices. They may have also been sensitive to betas, but alphas don't really penetrate. So I doubt that I don't remember seeing a window, like a mica window on them, that would have allowed for the detection of alphas, but maybe that was there too. It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, again, to corroborate Travis's claims, I did the same thing. That damn concrete, I should not have picked it up. It was the day, and Erik will know this, so not getting into too many details or spoilers, but we were doing an interview that same day, the day that I had done that, and ended up with marks on myself as well. And I got hit by that door when one of the doors fell off at the homestead. We were interviewing someone who was kind of someone who was talking about what could potentially lie underneath. And I don't know if you remember that event, but when you and I were doing that, and we were kneeled behind the trees doing the interview, and at that point, that was just after I had lifted all of that stuff, and I went home, and that's when I was the most sick I had been, right after that. So I don't know if that has anything to do, if there's any kind of correlation there, but it just we didn't have anything to measure any of that stuff. So 9 months of sunburn-ish type stuff.
Right. I remember you describing that to me when we would speak on the phone, and I remember the difficulty that your physicians had with identifying exactly what was it and what would have been the cause.
Right.
Did you ever get what you thought was a satisfactory answer to those questions?
Nothing. It was respiratory, and I did have lesions. I did have some kind of what appeared to be burns, but I mean, I was getting. You're walking through the woods, you're getting, chip or cuts or whatever, so you don't really know. But I mean, to see him have the same kind of markings, it's like, oh, maybe it's something, but I can't prove that. I mean, but it was just coincidental that, wow, he had the same marks that I did in the same location after the same stupid move, i.e. lifting up a big ass concrete freaking casing. Yeah, that wasn't smart. I don't know.
It's natural to be curious what's in there. I mean, it's clearly an artificial structure. It's it looks like a well. As far as we can tell, that's what it is. There was water in there. It may interest you to know that I returned to that site several times with measurement devices, and with the exception of a couple of short visits, when I would literally poke the device down into that area where that well is, I didn't see anything. And so again, this goes to it's transient. And, it makes me uncomfortable describing everything as transient. But what do you do when everything's transient? It is what it is. So, is there something in that vicinity?
We'll get there.
Does it have anything to do with the well itself, or is it something to do with that area? And I think that's the right question.
Right.
Yeah.
Erik, I have a quick question. Back to the radiation, and just I don't know if you can answer this, but I was just curious, the type of radiation that Travis and Jim were supposedly exposed to. Is that the same type of radiation put out by the GPR machine?
No.
Okay.
No, and
good question,
I
man.
appreciate that question. That's actually the right kind of question. Keep those coming, because we use these terms sometimes loosely. I mean, it is radiation in the sense that, yes, it can carry energy through space, it can radiate. When we're talking about GPR, we're talking about what we sometimes call RF, or radio frequency. We're talking about electromagnetic waves that are being sent into, in this case, the ground, like a radio. Think of it as a radio station that you're dragging along the ground, right? In the case of the ionizing radiation that was mentioned, and that is picked up by those little red devices, or by a Geiger counter or something like that, you're looking at something else. And there are categories of something else that might bear mentioning here. So you could be seeing gamma rays. This is electromagnetic radiation, typically higher energy. It's one of the byproducts of, for example, a nuclear decay event or even a fusion event. So there's that type of energy. Gamma detectors are pretty common. Like I said, I have some here. But then there's also what we refer to as beta radiation, which really we're just talking about electrons, that have been ejected from a nucleus. Also a fission byproduct. And then there's alphas. These are basically helium nuclei without any electrons, just a couple of protons and a couple of neutrons zipping out. And each of these things can do things not just to our instruments, but also to our physiology, and not all of them good.
There are a lot of different radiation types, clearly.
That's right. So the distinguishing, the term ionizing radiation, do we understand what that means, or would that bear some explanation here?
No, please. I don't understand it. I mean, if you guys do.
Sure. So when we refer to ionizing, what we're talking about is we're taking, material in its natural state, say an atom with all its electrons, and we might be knocking some of those electrons completely out of their orbits, if you will, out of their orbitals, and taking them away from the host atom. So these kinds of, where you put energy into the system, the atom or the molecule, when you put energy in because of incoming radiation, what happens is you can break molecular bonds, such as make up our proteins and our genes. That's bad. Okay, maybe I should have just said bad. But ionizing radiation is nothing to trifle with. It's something that can be quite harmful, and the harm can be long term, or it can just be an injury like a burn that we can heal from.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to explain that.
Oh, sure.
Seriously.
I hope I'm okay with it.
No, I think you did. I mean, this is stuff that people want to hear, because we're not getting enough of that in the show. I mean, it's just because of time. I mean, to get a deep dive, it's great.
Right. I really love Travis and Jim's explanations of the very same topics. I think they do a more succinct job than I do.
Yeah, don't kid yourself. You do an awesome job. I love listening to you. Now, so E block we go into, and we're just talking about more of the 1,000-foot object, anomalous object in that area, and then we go to the F block where it's kind of like, well, yeah, it's time to start digging. And not to give too much away for what you said, but the teaser, you do get into, we do see alpacas being brought. Oh no, Maureen. So there are other biosensors, right, Erik? What's the alpaca? What's the reasoning behind alpacas? As opposed to any of the other animals or beasts, the creatures that we could put in the ranch. Right. Why alpacas?
So I want to speak to this without making anyone angry at me. Look, we know that there have been events with animals in the past, gory events, mutilations.
Sure.
And there's all kinds of speculation as to who or what is doing it. We've had reports of things happening to cows and bulls and calves and dogs. There's one line of thinking that says that the phenomenon, if we allow ourselves to attribute volition to it, is novelty seeking or novelty sensitive, meaning when you introduce something new to the property, perhaps you get a new phenomenology or a new reaction. Look, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm not asserting it. I'm basically repeating something that's been said to me before. So it occurred to me that a reasonable test of this would be to introduce animal species onto the ranch that have perhaps never been there before. I'm sure you follow this line of thinking, right?
Absolutely.
Put something new there. And so I was joking with Brandon about all the exotic kinds of animals that we might introduce, because I'm pretty sure there haven't been any ostriches on that property. I'm pretty sure that there haven't been any silverback gorillas, or and so
that would be awesome.
Alligators, whatever. So just brainstorming. I think putting alpacas is a way to test the hypothesis of, do we see anything? Might we see something new happen if we introduce that novel species? The goal is not, and I want to be clear about this, it is not to see an animal harmed.
No. I think it's been made pretty clear, and people, they know that's not the intention. It's trying to draw something out. I mean, Sure. At least my reaction to seeing an alpaca is not to harm it. I think they're kind of cute. And I think you still get huge tax breaks if you own alpaca. Isn't that a thing? I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Yeah, it was a thing I know for years.
I'll have to check and see if my HOA allows for it.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, I think if you owned a certain number of alpaca, you got like ridiculous tax breaks for some unknown reason. I don't know if that's still true or not, but I know it was at one point. So, all right, Erik, that's kind of, so we've gone through, our last episode, and I think, we can get to some of the questions direct from the magical internet that have sent questions. I mean, we could do it like last time. Maureen, if you want to go first, please, you can read the first. I think those are emails, and then Jason can take the Twitter ones, and I'll do the Facebook ones, and then we'll just bang through it.
So John has a couple questions. He spoke about, in episode 5, we saw that there may be heightened radiation coming from the well. Has there been any testing done on that well and the water within it? If so, what could account for such high levels of radiation in a well? Do any neighbors have reports of radiation from their well water?
Oh, these are great questions.
That's good.
I haven't participated in any radioactive characterization of the water in that well. I mentioned earlier that I have personally taken measurements in the vicinity of the well. And when the lid has been moved back just a bit, actually poked an instrument down in there to see what might show up. And again, here's that word, transient.
Yeah.
With rare exception, I see nothing there. Oh, and as for the rest of the question, it's a good question. Just had several parts. about the surrounding properties, neighboring properties, and are people seeing radioactivity there? I have to say I don't know. But that question motivates me to try to do a little digging. Maybe that's not the right word. But I appreciate the question because it raises a good point. Maybe we should be finding out whether there has been any kind of radiation characterization done in nearby properties.
Yeah.
They got
So-
questions.
Yeah, and John also wants to know if you've experienced any equipment malfunctions off the ranch, such as when you're traveling around the basin.
Yes.
Not
Erik,
cool,
can you
but-
elaborate on that at all? Has there been anything in particular that you're noticing that goes out all the time?
Sure. I guess how I approach this question depends upon whether it is to me personally or whether it is to our team kind of in the aggregate. I should probably only speak to my own experience. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the kind of strange things that happened during one of my trips to the ranch, or following one of my trips to the ranch, I should say, as I was on my way back from the property, I looked at my GPS and discovered that I had, instead of the usual 2 to 3 hour trip ahead of me, I had about a 13-hour trip ahead of me because the GPS had me located somewhere in Kansas. It's a malfunction, right?
Well, should we jump to the Twitter questions?
Sure, go for it.
All right. Well, Ed asks, what was the range in hertz that was subject to the intense transmissions at the beginning of the episode?
I would like to suggest that we save that question for Travis. I believe that was his observation. And I know that we're seeing a portion of that exercise that he conducted on camera. But the short answer is it's actually quite broad band. It was across a very wide range of the wide portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I think that's a great one. Please save that question for when you speak to Travis.
Absolutely.
Cool. Great.
All right. Well, next, Blue Mini Mike asks, in the most recent episode, Travis came up with theories about wormholes and a buried UFO. What was your initial reaction to his ideas, and do you have access to tools that can prove them? Are there more mundane theories that you can test that can explain what is going on at the ranch first? If so, what are they?
Well, I actually appreciate the question a lot. It's the right kind of question. My initial reaction is probably the least relevant of all of those. My initial reaction is probably like the reaction of the viewer. I'm hearing something for the first time, so I would ask anyone who's hearing it, what was your initial reaction to what you heard? I don't presume any knowledge of wormholes that is any more authoritative than the next person, particularly any more authoritative than, say, Travis. So this is a case where I think it's good behavior on my part to listen and to learn and to allow Travis and others to finish developing that hypothesis so that we arrive at a point where it is testable. Because the hypotheses that are of greatest value to us are those that are testable and falsifiable. If we can do a test that has the power to falsify the hypothesis, and in fact we support it, then we're on our way to understanding what the hell is going on the ranch. And so when I listened, as Travis explained this, what I was particularly listening for is what events could be accounted for by that idea. And that's what I would encourage anyone else to do, is to ask this question: what comes under the cover of this explanation? And then the second part of the question was, well, what tools do we have to explore it? I do have some ideas about something that can be deployed on the ranch to detect distortions, if you will, in space-time. But, this is all new territory for me, so I don't really want to go into a lot of conjecture about what that is and how it would work. But I'm looking forward to giving that a try.
Nice. All right, we'll move on to the next question, and it comes from Paul. And Paul asks, will they be getting an expert or experts that know about the local environment, like a geologist or a biologist?
The answer is yes.
All right. Throw it out there, Eric.
Excellent. I like it. No, that's a great answer.
No, I think the reason I feel comfortable just putting it out there like that is, look, that's the very definition of due diligence, isn't it?
Right.
Get the folks who bring that perspective and who are willing to come onto the property, disclose to them what we've observed, share that with them, let them wrap their minds around it, and volunteer some ideas, adding to what we know collectively. I welcome that.
All right, our final question from Twitter comes from Shawnee 2 times, and the question is, what do you think of Travis's methodology in studying the phenomenon at the ranch? What would you have done differently?
I'm really interested in why I'm being asked that question.
Because you are a respected scientist here, and it's interesting to hear your take on another scientist's approach. Yes. I don't know. I'm helping out here.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I've learned a lot through my interactions with Travis and with Jim. And if I were not learning in those interactions, if I were not hearing things that I hadn't thought myself, then it really wouldn't be worth their time or mine. So I'm always parsing the communication for what's new. And when I listen, I think you've heard me say this before, I really work hard to maintain the balance of having neither confirmation nor contrarian bias. I don't think I know all the answers. In fact, I know I don't know all the answers or even the right methodology. I've had an opportunity to develop and test some hypotheses, and it's refreshing to have Travis come and volunteer some of his own. I will say that some of the things that he and also Jim have done, some of the activities and some of the things they've deployed are things that perhaps I wouldn't have thought of, at least not right away. But that's why we need a team. We need people who think about this differently.
Very cool. So gracious in your answer, Eric. I love it. No, I mean, seriously, it's you're learning from, you guys are all learning from each other. You're all bringing something new to the party,
I hope so.
So I think it's showing on camera as well. So I'm going to start with these couple of Facebook questions. So from Facebook, we have Rick Lee Waddell. He asks, and I said this before, we had part of this question, I believe, last week. He says, I'm curious to know what kind of vibratory frequencies and testing they've used or have tried besides gamma, microwave, and RF frequencies. Also, what ground testing has been done, i.e. water table, radon, etc., that has been ruled out?
Okay, very good. So in that list that you just read, I don't think I heard anything about seismic. That Correct. Is one of the things that we are continually monitoring. Because there's always the possibility that some of what we're looking at has geophysics as its really as at the base. The other one that comes to mind is measurement of sound. Really what we're talking about are atmospheric pressure variations, sounds at a frequency that's much lower than what we can hear. We call that infrasound. So I collect infrasonic data. Now, I forget all the items on that list, but just for completeness, I think we've also mentioned that we look at low frequency, magnetic or electromagnetic, like ELF, ULF, VLF. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're looking at the RF, the radio frequency spectrum.
Okay, so then going to the ground testing, what ground testing has been done before? And examples are like water table, radon, et cetera. Right. Like what has been ruled out?
At the very beginning, when I was invited to participate in a discussion about the ranch with some folks who had previously been involved, that was one of my questions. And my understanding is that extensive testing was performed. and that nothing extraordinary was identified through those tests. So it may be that we want to revisit that.
All right. So then we have one from Joe Smith. And Joe asks, has the team thought of building a Faraday cage to block out the harmful signals being produced in the sky and around the mesa? I'm curious since it hasn't been mentioned in the program yet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I love that.
So particularly when the topic of human safety is raised, and we think about some of the things that have happened to individuals, specific individuals on the property, and I think you might be one of them. The idea of an electromagnetic safe house doesn't sound so crazy, does it? No. A Faraday cage, that's what he's referring to, an enclosure that does not allow electromagnetic emanations to get through. Wow.
Could you imagine? I mean, I think it would be incredible to put like the command center or part of the command center just encased in that as the safe house. That would be a very cool structure.
Yeah. You can create an RF free zone, by even using copper screen material. In fact, in my career, I did some what's called screen room work, where electronic devices need to be characterized in an environment where there are no external RF sources, so that when we measure something inside of that environment, we know that it's coming from something inside, ostensibly the device under test or the DUT. Yeah. So the idea of a Faraday cage, I think, is a really good one, and it makes a lot of sense to me that someone watching the program would raise this question.
Sure.
I'd like to see, I had to be sewn into a Faraday suit once for testing so they could simulate me getting electrocuted to test whether lightning was a factor in a UFO case. And I'll have to send you guys a picture of this.
Made for great TV.
It was really ridiculous, but I looked like a big silver blob, and now I just want to see people wearing Faraday suits on the ranch.
That'd be awesome.
There's a material that you can purchase that is like a fine copper mesh. It's supple like our cloth, the cloth that we wear in our clothing. And I've thought about it. I've thought about if I could get something on my head, something to wear on my chest, would I? I think I might.
Yeah, I think so. It's not gonna hurt.
Yeah, it kind of a electromagnetic chainmail type of thing.
That'd be some kick-ass chainmail.
It would. Right. It would be something to see, wouldn't it? But it sounds like you've already beat me to the punch there, Maureen. You put that on, and it kept you from being. What were you standing in the vicinity of some big Tesla coils or something?
It was basically. Okay. And they had the Tesla coil reach out to shock me.
Right. Well, it would either be that or a Van de Graaff, right?
Yeah. And and I actually did feel it, but not as much as I should have.
Wow.
All right. So the last question we have right now from Facebook is from a guy named Brian Berkey. And he says, what kind of education does Erik have? I've heard several cast members talk about how smart he is, and he seems to be a scientist or tech specialist. So I'm just curious.
My graduate degree is plasma physics. I studied physics and mathematics as an undergraduate. And I've worked as an electrical engineer. I've done product development in consumer electronics. I think I mentioned the battery chargers and so forth. Also, other circuit design that made its way into some reasonably successful commercial products. In addition, I've developed instruments used in the X-ray analytic industry, the kinds of things that people use to do elemental analysis. I've designed X-ray sources. And I've also worked in the field of archival optical media. My title was lead scientist in the development of something known as the M-Disc. And so I've had an opportunity to work.
I love that.
In a few different areas, and hopefully that's a satisfactory answer.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's perfect. So, let's not push on any more of these questions right now. I think this is good. I think we got more than enough.
Sure.
We have a few saved for later, for Travis, and for when we bring you back again, and hopefully, after last night's show, we'll have an announcement soon. We're fingers crossed for a season 2. So I think we're getting close. So we should know very soon. But Erik, thank you again so much for joining us. I mean,
sure.
This is awesome. I know we all really enjoyed having you. I mean, well, no, I enjoyed having you. I don't know about them, but
nah. Yes, actually, it's super insightful and great to hear from the scientific perspective in more depth than what we get, obviously, in a 45-minute television show.
Right.
Absolutely.
And thanks for
the format of our informal discussion. I think is one that I'm more comfortable with, to be honest. I like the discussion more than I like to be put in front of cameras.
Nice. And that's it for us this week on Skinwalker Debrief. So be sure to join us next week for another episode, along with yet another cast member who I have yet to really identify. No, we have somebody coming in next week. We're kind of seeing which one's going to be able to jump on it really quick.
It's a surprise.
It'll be a surprise. Yes, it'll be a surprise. Jason, could you tell us how to tell people how to get a hold of us and send in their questions?
Keep those questions coming in. So email is always good. contact@rogueplanet.tv. That's the email address to send us your questions. And, of course, on Twitter, we are at Skinwalker Pod.
Excellent. Erik, thanks again, man. This has been great.
Sure.
And I know you got a lot of fans out there. And I know you're not on social media, so, we'll try to filter stuff through you as more stuff comes in.
Yeah, I welcome it. I'll try to come up with a better and more effective way to interface with people who are really genuinely interested. I just haven't found it yet, and quite honestly, I don't sleep much, so I'm a pretty busy guy.
We all know this.
I serve a lot of masters, I think.
Well, thanks again, Erik. This has been great. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.